Today I'm joined by Chris Butler, and the question I want to ask him is this. Chris, is it ethical that 30 to 40% of self-employed estate agents leave self-employment after a year? Talk to me.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
It's something that I've battled with in my previous life, where there were certain targets and what have you. And for me, I think there's an ethical obligation to make sure that those you bring into the business have a much higher chance of success, I suppose, than 30 to 40% falling out.
And again, we have anecdotal evidence of this, but the biggest models out there still churn around 30, some say near as high as 40%. Is that what you've been told? Well, I mean, obviously you were involved with one yourself.
I was, yes. To say those figures are correct, right? You look at it and go, where are those people going? So I'm fortunate enough that I've seen big brokerage models in the US and how they operate and what have you. Now, in the US, they'll move from one brokerage to another. So a 30% fallout, 40% fallout isn't the worst news because the agent's moving from one place to another. The issue I have with figures being so high is in the UK, if that person is falling out, there's a very, very small chance they're switching models. They're actually going back into employment or what have you.
Okay, so really, it all comes down to accountability and responsibility. Is the issue with the people at the model, or is the issue with the person joining the model?
It's ethical recruiting is the crux of it, right? So do I want to be...
So both still have a responsibility, don't they?
It starts with the model recruiting, though. Then you look at the value proposition, support, marketing, tech, whatever that looks like. Bringing people in knowing that 30% to 40% are going to fail, for me, means your model isn't set up to support the agent through to success, and it's a numbers game. So, of course, the agent has an element to play in that, and not everyone will be successful in these models. But let's say we pick the higher number, 40%. You're bringing on 10 people, 6 are surviving. What happens to those 4 people that have taken car loans, second mortgages, had arguments with their other halves? They're now leaving the models with 10, 20, whatever, all their savings gone, or 10, 20, 30 grand's worth of debt.
Probably more.
Probably more. But
Okay,
it's the
I hate to use the word fault, but I'm going to use the word fault. If you had to put the fault cause at both the employed agent's door, who joins and fails, or joins and learns, because there was no such thing as a failure, but what percentage would you put at each of the store, the agent and the model?
60-40, the brokerage model. So 40% on the agent that joins when they shouldn't have done, 60%, maybe 65% on the brokerage model, because they statistically know these, and I'm sure they're not thrown out at the start of the recruitment process. But actually, someone might go, right, I want to go self-employed. One, working out if they're the right fit and really stress testing them and talking them out of it, I think is what you need to do from an ethical point of view. But 2, having the support system set up. So you have, again, I talk a lot about support marketing and tech, so that the agent doesn't come on, send out a load of, like I bought you, birthday card style envelopes, get them sent out, and then go, what next? They have proper accountability and proper support.
I mean, some of the biggest models in the UK, self-employment wise, and we're going to go and have a separate video on this. Some have models where they just focus on you have to be an agent to join, and there are some of the models where anyone can join. And again, anecdotal evidence suggests that the fallout of bed rate is pretty similar. Would that be fair?
So we've come up with the same thing as one of the other models. You have to have 2 years worth of experience. However, if you're an absolute exception and anomaly, then our partner agents can say, right, this person should be put in front of Chris or my team.
Okay, but you haven't answered the question. The question was, do you think it makes a difference whether they should be ex-agents or not?
My view is I think they should be ex-agents in 95%
But if the fall-through
cases.
rate is the same, it doesn't matter, does it?
I don't think any model out there in the UK right now is good enough to support agents from outside the industry, knowing what I know.
Why?
Because we're not regulated.
What's that going to make a difference?
So the training element of having to get a license in the US and what have you means that that person is self-discovering, one, if the model's right for them, but two, the becoming a estate agent is an extremely hard
Okay,
vocation.
but your old model that you used to work for or work with, they were heavy on training. So why didn't it work there?
They were heavy, and it was an exceptional model, but they were heavy on training for lead generation and how to go and grow a business. And that element was
Which is
brilliant.
the biggest problem in a estate agency?
100%. But actually, when you start as a high street agent, you go and sit as a neg and you learn from the office. And if you're lucky, your manager will pay for you to go on some training, but you're in an environment where you learn. Most of the models now, and certainly post COVID, you sit and you work at home and you don't have that. You're not a sponge. You can't absorb the nuances, how to negotiate, what to do in tricky situations because you're isolated. So for me, as self-employed,
But that's what your previous model, you had market centres you can go in and there's the internet you can learn. I'm sorry, I don't think it makes a difference.
again, the model I was part of previously had some world-class elements in it, were really, really good. All I can talk about is my experience and what I saw personally in my business of that model. So I'm not.
So you believe that people joining self-employed models, unless they're exceptional, should be agents, even though their churn rate or the number of people that leave the model after a year is similar to ones that don't offer, that don't want agents to don't want people to be agents.
I think it's hard here because we're comparing two models.
But the numbers are the same.
Indeed, but so one model, for example, that is heavily focused on training may be exceptional at getting current agents into production and learning how to lead generate and get going.
Okay.
The other model we're loosely discussing may be exceptional at recruiting agents in, but they're not offering the value that the aforementioned model does. So
It's fair goes. What about, okay, so that's the models. Let's come back to the responsibility of people joining, becoming a self-employed model agent. What responsibility do they have? How much of the fault or cause lays at their door?
again, we said 35, 40%, right? You shouldn't go into something and risk your savings, debt, etc., unless you fully believe in it. So
Okay, so in your experience, look, putting aside, let's just say you had the most perfect model in the world as a brokerage, why do you think people do fail? Either experienced agents or
it's
non-experienced
really
agents.
simple: accountability and mindset. So let me give you a scenario. When I started my first estate agency up in Solihull, I had a business partner, and I remember him ringing me one day, and it was pissing down with rain, and he said, "Chris, just knock on one more door." And you know, when you're at school and you playing football and your trousers are soaked, it was like that. Knocked on one more door, got a listing on a really, really nice road, and that moment then, and we didn't sell it by the way, but we got loads of instructions off the back of it. That was a pivotal moment in my life, genuinely, because if I wouldn't have knocked that door, we wouldn't have been profitable in our first year. I wouldn't have been profitable in the next couple of years, maybe. I wouldn't be where I am today. So I actually attribute knocking on that door as a key part of my journey. Had I been by myself and it been Chris Buckler, not part of the brand that we'd started, I would have taken the food off my own table. The fact I didn't want to take it off my business partners and he was there in my ear meant that actually I carried on and persevered. When you start as a self-employed agent, most people decide not to join a team. They want to do it by themselves and have their own name above the door, which is great. But if you don't have that accountability and that drive and that either that business partner or that person looking after you, I think you're far more likely to fail.
Do you think there's a responsibility for the model to have accountability with that agent, even though it's their own business?
One of the great bits about the North American models is the revenue share or the growth share piece. So if I introduce Chris Watkin as an agent, he comes onto the estate agency and starts selling. I hold you personally accountable. I really, really like that. But I think there's also elements of, as the boss man of the business, to go, right, if an agent comes on and they're not hitting a certain level by a certain point, what can we do to interject? Whether it's adding a business coach, whether it's pull them into certain sessions. So it's providing the gap that's needed rather than just going, well, let's get more in, let's get more in. I'd rather not be the biggest, but have a failure rate of 10 to 20%, but genuinely help agents grow profitable estate agency businesses than go, well, as is a numbers game, we'll keep churning and churning. And by focusing on helping agents run profitable estate agency businesses, the churn rate's going to be a lot lower.
So you're saying that anyone who runs a self-employed model should have not a safety net financially, but have alarm bells that says if you're not here, and then help them and get them going. Are you also saying that those that bring in people have a personal responsibility to look after the ones and turbo them up a bit?
On the latter, yes. And I think there almost needs to be, if you're benefiting from a growth share or a revenue share element, it needs to be written out exactly what you're doing. So we've got an agent, Josh Smith, really, really good guy who you know. He's brought in an agent and he is holding him accountable every week to the actions that he should go and do. Just let me jump in quickly, Chris. I know in the first 4 weeks whether an agent's going to succeed or not. It's that simple. I'd argue any model would know in the first 4 weeks, are you doing the activities you need to do to succeed? If after 4 weeks I log onto your database and say you've only got 35 people added, you've not sent the articles that we've provided, I can see you've not sent any of the marketing materials we've provided for you, you're not going to succeed. If you haven't turned up to our weekly kickoff or our meetings, I'm going to know. I'd argue I'll know within 2 weeks. So actually, from a support point of view, what can we do? If we think you're good enough and we only want to bring you on if we think you're going to succeed, we don't just want to bring a neg that's been made redundant, then actually my duty of care at that point is to go, shit, we're letting this person down. Now, you can't save everyone, but what does our support, what's our value proposition do to reignite them and get them going? And I think for me, that's an element we want to bring at the estate agency that I don't see, and I don't know every other model, but I don't see being done or hear being done in some of the other self-employed models. And but there are some great ones out there as well. I'm certainly not bashing them all. I'm just saying, for me, if I look at this, I'd rather recruit 5 and have 4 succeed than recruit 10 and have 6 succeed. It doesn't stack for me. It doesn't work for me. And ethically, I think it's wrong.
Thank you for your time today, Chris.
Thank you.